Hey, thank you so much for joining me in the kitchen. I want to say a huge thank you for joining to all of you. We're moving into the holiday season, and I wanted to share something that is a major Mexican tradition, and that is making ponche to serve at the Christmas parties, the ones that are called posadas. And they start the 15th of December and go till the 25th, but you could be invited to one every single night. Now, there's three essential things for a posada. The first is the ponche that I'm going to work through with you today. Second thing is tamales. Third thing is a piñata. Usually for the kids, but the adults sort of get into the action as well. So when you're talking about ponche, we start by thinking of it first as a warm beverage. So it's going to be delicious, sort of sweet, sour, warm beverage that is at its base a tea, a sweetened tea that is made from tamarind and jamaica, the little relative of the hibiscus here. So you have to go and get those things wherever you get them. Of course, you can get them online, but I'm going to encourage you all to go to a Mexican grocery store, because starting the beginning of December, you'll walk into the store and everything will be about ponche. You'll find the tamarind, you'll find the jamaica, then you'll find the second thing that goes in there, and that's all the fruits and the sugar cane that go in there. And then the third thing that goes into, well, it can go in to the ponche is a little bit of rum. Okay, so as they say in Mexico, you can serve it straight or you can serve it con piquete, with the little bite. Okay, so I'm going to show you all the way to getting through this. We start with tamarind. Now, if you want to make the best flavored tamarind tea, you're going to start with a tamarind pod. They have a barky exterior on them like that, and you just kind of crush that exterior and let it fall down. And if you have really good tamarind pods, they won't be too broken up, but if they are broken up, it's no problem at all. You'll have a lot of little pieces that you have to get off, but as I'm crushing this, I'm getting a lot of little pieces as well. So you do that. Then I grab it on this end where you see these little strings coming out. I grab it on that end and then pull it so I get the strings out of it. And then we're going to collect all of those. You got to get all those strings out. Well, you will get them out at one point or another anyway. And then we're going to take all of the peel. This is 8 ounces of the peeled tamarind and put it into a bowl here, along with 2 other ingredients. Now, this is jamaica. So when you go to any store that sells jamaica, and sometimes this will be called hibiscus because it's in the hibiscus family. It's not actually a flower. It's the part that's on it that covers the flower. It's the calyx of the flower. And you want to look for ones that are really dark colored like that, almost like a beautiful maroon color. So I've got a cup of that, so like a generous ½ ounce. And then I've got Mexican cinnamon that always seasons this, and I want about a 2-inch piece. Now this is the true cinnamon, so it's going to be very light and flaky. It doesn't look like the American cinnamon at all, which is really cassia bark, so we'll throw that in there. And then I'm going to cover this with 2 quarts of boiling water. Let me grab it underneath there. So I've got that to pour over this, and then this will steep until it is cool enough that I can put my hands in it. That's actually an essential thing because I have to dislodge the seeds from the tamarind petals. Tamarind pods. Okay, we'll put that back over there. Now let's talk about alternatives for tamarind. Some of you will find a tamarind paste. This one comes from, I believe, from Vietnam, and it is just a block of that tamarind that you saw there, but without seeds in it. So you would use the equivalent amount of this, which would be about 3/4 of a cup or so of it. And then you might find some of this in the Indian grocery stores, which is a tamarind concentrate, but when you open it up, it's very liquidy. You can see it kind of moving around in there. This is the least fresh of all the ones, I think, in terms of flavor. The most fresh being the tamarind pods that you actually take the barky husk off of. Now, while that's cooling down there, let's talk about the fruits that go into the ponche, because they're very prescribed in Mexico, and part of the fun of making ponche is to get these fruits from Mexico. So I walked into my local Mexican grocery store and I found the 3 things that go in there. We've got the 2 fruits, the guava and what's called tejocote or hawthorn in English, and the sugar cane. But then right by these fresh fruits and the sugar cane were the frozen versions of it in a special chest freezer that said everything for ponche. So you get the tejocotes, the guavas, and the sugar cane already peeled. And then in the aisle that had all the fruits in cans and jars, I found the ponche there, and what does it have? Yes, it has exactly the same things. We've got the hawthorns, the tejocotes, the guavas, and the sugar cane in there, all ready for you to use making the ponche. So I'm going to use the fresh stuff since we have it, and I'm very lucky to do that. Let's start with the sugar cane because that may surprise you. If you've never seen anybody work with sugar cane before, you have to be sort of rambunctious with it here. So at the place where you see the segments there, you just use a big knife to cut it. And then I'm going to go, actually, I think I may try this knife. That one's a little unwieldy for that. But you can cut this exterior off of the sugar cane. So you want to peel it. I'm just showing you this so that if you ever find yourself working with real sugar cane, fresh sugar cane, you'll know what to do with it. I'm not doing a very good job on that one there. I cut too much off of that one part of it there. But we have to get this really thick exterior off of here. And it's not something that you could do with a vegetable peeler. You have to do it with a knife. Okay. So there's a sort of sloppy version of what you would do. And then you want to cut it into basically 2-inch pieces, and then cut each one of the 2-inch pieces into quarters like that. So I've got some more of this that I've got to cut through now. So maybe I'll get better as I go along. That's a lot of work. I guess I would probably recommend to you to buy the already peeled frozen stuff because it'll be really good and easy for you to work with. I discovered or remembered after I started working in those longer pieces that it's actually way easier to peel this if you just cut them into the 2-inch pieces and then peel each one of the 2-inch pieces. And that's what I've got here. Now let's go on to the guavas. Guavas are really easy to work with in a lot of ways. Here, I'm going to cut one open, and then with a small spoon, I'm going to go into it like that, and I'm going to take out all of the seeds. Now, there's a lot of flavor in those seeds, but it's not going to play here. You could make a little jam out of that and strain it, but those seeds are extremely hard. And so you want to get them out of here because they will not make your ponche good. But the flavor of guavas, if you haven't had them, is incredibly tropical. It is one of my very, very favorite of the tropical fruits. So I have a few more of these guavas to do after cutting them. I mean, after taking the seeds out, I'm going to cut them into little strips like that so that they distribute very nicely through our ponche. Okay, those are going to go back onto the tray here. If you buy the frozen ones, just defrost them, but you still have to go through that same seeding process there. And then we have the hawthorns, the tejocotes. What do they taste like? Well, it's a kind of light flavor that's floral. And I think that the floral quality is what exactly people are looking for in those. If you don't find them or you only find jarred ones, that's absolutely fine. You could just put more of the guavas in there. I would love the guavas. But you don't do anything to them. We're just going to put those in whole. We've got our peeled sugar cane right there. And when this is cooled down enough for me to get my hands in it, I'm going to show you what we do to take those seeds out of the tamarind pods. With clean hands, you can go in here and take the soaked pods, and you're just going to kind of, I just like to squeeze them like that. So we're trying to get all the pulp off of the seeds. Now, there's not much of a way to do this other than to use your hands. And the pulp of this is the good stuff. That's what we're really going for here. So you just pull them up one at a time and work that pulp away from the seed. Don't worry about taking the seeds out because we're going to strain it once we get this all done. Now, this is finished. I have dislodged all of the seeds, but if we were going to be using the brick of tamarind paste, that would have just gone in. You have to kind of tear it up into smaller pieces. That would have just gone in with the jamaica and just soaked until it cooled off enough that you could handle the whole thing, but you just have to stir it and just make sure that it's dissolved. The concentrate, the same thing you would just measure and in the recipe, the quantities are all going to be given for all of those different options there. But try working with the tamarind pods sometime. I just think the adventure of it is really fun. So we're going to now strain this mixture. Look at what a beautiful color that is. It's just really lovely. Strain that mixture back in here. I will just move it around to make sure that all of the solids stay in the strainer, but all of that pulp goes out. I think we've got that there. And then we have the sweeteners to talk about. Now this is, because it's a very traditional dish, the sweeteners tend to be very traditional too. And that would mean that we would be using piloncillo, or the cone sugar. Now it usually will come in the Mexican grocery stores in two different ways. It'll either be small cones or big cones, and both of them, to tell you the truth, will usually come in light and dark. So you might find a lot of different options. For this one, I like to choose small cone light because you can just throw them in here and start dissolving. They are not really hard to shave. You can use a big knife and just shave them like that for very quick dissolving, but you don't have to do that because it is sugar, and yes, it will dissolve. So I'm just going to drop these three in here. If you were using, that's going to give us just about 4 ounces or so of the sugar. If you were using one of the large cones and it weighs about 8 ounces, it'd be about half of this, but this you will have to cut. Somebody told me a really interesting trick. You can put that into the microwave for just about 20 seconds or so, and it will unstabilize it enough because there is liquid still in here. It's the raw sugar with the molasses still in it. It will unstabilize it enough that the cone will just start to fall apart. So you might want to use that trick. And then I've got some white sugar that's going to go in here. All piloncillo to me is a little heavy for this. So I just want to let that, I'm going to put that over the fire here. And then we will just stir that until it comes to a simmer. And all of that piloncillo, those cones, have been dissolved. While that's working, I am going to chop up a couple of apples. Now, everybody's got their own version. After you get your tamarind and jamaica base that's cinnamon scented, and then you get these 3 elements that pretty much everybody puts in their ponche, people start putting in all kinds of other things. More spices could go in there. Different kinds of seasonal fruit could go in there. I'm keeping it kind of simple because there's enough going on here for you to say grace over. So I'm going to put a couple of apples in here as well. I'm just going to quarter them, core them, and peel them, and then chop them into small pieces. Scoop the apple in here. The piloncillo has mostly melted now. Oh, and by the way, if you don't have piloncillo, you can use brown sugar for that. It has a little bit of a different flavor, but it'll still be really delicious in this. Then we've got all of the special ingredients, the hawthorn or tejocotes, the guavas, and the sugar cane. Now, if you haven't ever worked with sugar cane or had sugar cane served to you this way, just know that it's very fibrous, and you don't chew it and then eat it the way that you would eat the apples or the pieces of the guava. You actually chew on it, and then you will dislodge its special sweetness, and then you just get rid of the little fibrous stuff that's in your mouth. We'll let this simmer for just a few minutes, and it'll be ready to spike or not, and then serve. If you're going to spike this, I would recommend about a cup of white rum. That's the kind of, you could put tequila in it if you want, but I'll say that in Mexico, they typically would put in this aguardiente, which is aguardiente de caña, or a cane rum, a very simple cane rum. So I'm going to add that to it. I've got a very low fire now. And oftentimes you could just leave it unspiked and let everybody have a little bit of shot of the rum in their own glass. This is an earthenware mug that is typically used for serving the ponche. Interestingly enough, in many of the Mexican groceries in the United States, this is such an important thing that you will find them there. So if you want to have a real Mexican posada, I highly recommend looking for these to have in your possession for having your Mexican posada. Now I'm going to ladle some of this in here. You want to get some of the solids and then some of the juice. I like to serve it with a spoon, which is very typical. This puts me right back into Puebla. The most memorable ponche that I ever tasted was at a posada that was in a churchyard, and somebody had made this really beautiful, beautiful ponche, and they served it in these earthenware mugs like this, and we stood around in the brisk air and enjoyed a really warming mug full of ponche.